What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this special segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa and the Convo Couch. We are here live with a very special guest. Craig Pasta Jardula is in the building. What's going on, Pasta?
Thank you for everybody for having me here.
Hey, it's not a problem. Also, as well, we have Tulsi Gabbard. She's here too. I think she's going to be asking questions. But Pasta,
aloha, good to see you.
Gotcha. Tulsi Gabbard.
We're in the presence of greatness. We must recognize.
Well, at least great pasta.
So we have today a very special guest, Representative Tulsi Gabbard. I have to ask Tulsi, are we allowed to call you Tulsi here?
I prefer that you call me Tulsi.
Okay, great.
Here or anywhere.
Awesome, because it's Mi Casa es Su Casa, and like,
yeah,
you know, it's I can't call you Representative. You know, it's my house.
It's a mouthful.
It's
a mouthful.
So thank you so much for coming here. For those of you who do not know, Tulsi Gabbard is a Democratic presidential hopeful, and is, in my opinion, the front runner right now. I think she's a front runner, and the reason I say that she's a front runner is because, well, when you have the entire mainstream establishment supposedly talking about how invaluable you are, but surprisingly enough, always want you on their show because you bring them the highest ratings, I think that probably makes you closer to the front runner than people may believe. So that's why I say it. But some people disagree. However, we're going to allow Tulsi to explain to us and talk to us about all these different issues that so many people have been trying to warp and kind of misinform people by asking these leading questions that never really get to the substance of the issue. And so between myself and Fiorella and Pasta, we hope to give Tulsi the space to answer some of these tough questions that many people have not allowed her to answer. So I do want to start off with something that's most recent, the Golan Heights situation with Trump and Syria and Israel and this whole thing is, seems to be clearly, there's something more nefarious going on behind the background. But I know that one of the things that you advocate most for is, international sovereignty and making sure that we adhere to international law. Yeah. So, can you tell us how you feel about the Golan Heights situation, and then, conversely, how you feel about Israel's role in the Palestinian conflict and this Golan Heights, and constantly seeming to be a kind of like I don't want to say a propaganda arm, a military arm for the U.S. instead of being an actual ally by, keeping us out of these type of wars and these situations.
Well, I want to focus on a couple of the core central problems that I've been pointing out with that example of Trump's announcement, as well as many of the issues that we're seeing in our foreign policy today, where decisions are being made and policies are being set as it relates to other countries in the world and our actions or inaction for that matter. They don't serve the interests of the American people or our country. Which should be the driver for how we're making decisions, both for our domestic policy as well as our foreign policy. With Trump's announcement the other day with regards to the Golan Heights, that was so clearly a political stunt to help his friend Bibi Netanyahu in his elections that are coming up in Israel very soon, I think in the next week or two. A statement not without consequence. A statement that inflamed the conflict that exists there, that inflamed the tensions, and really puts us in a place where we have the potential for increasing tensions and conflict between the many different countries who are involved and engaged within the region. So yes, not only are we talking about Israel and Syria, but we're also talking about the United States, Russia, Iran, and other countries who are involved there. So this lack of foresight in understanding the consequences of making a statement like that, of making that kind of decision, is exactly what's wrong. It's what's wrong with some of the decisions that President Trump has made, but it's also what's wrong with so many of our foreign policy decisions that have been made, too often under the guise of humanitarianism.
Do you think that has that plays a role into how the Palestinian side of the conflict has unraveled too? We're ignoring it for the wrong reasons because of some of the factors that you named.
Yeah, I think that does play a part in this. I think ultimately this is this is a conflict between Israel and Palestine that has gone on for so long, and the decisions that this administration has taken have not helped further the cause of peace. Really, that only can come about when these two sides, when Israel and Palestine, are able to broker that path forward. No one else can do it for them. But to exacerbate the situation, which is what this administration has done, does not serve our interest, nor does it serve the interests of peace.
I want to talk a little bit about election integrity.
Good.
In 2016,
Which, by the way, anyway, I want to let you ask your question, but I'm so glad that you're bringing it up because it is rarely brought up with the intent of actually addressing election security. So forgive me for interrupting.
No,
you.
perfect. Thank you. In 2016, I and many Bernie Sanders supporters, as you know, experienced a lot of mishaps with our ballots, not being counted, provisional ballots.
Yep.
And also a random switching of your registration at the last minute, especially in California. It was a huge issue. It was a huge issue nationwide. So I want you to speak a little bit more about the Securing America's Election Act.
Thank you. Yeah. So there's a couple of issues that you brought up. The issues with making it as hard as possible for people to be involved in our democracy is a challenge that we continue to face. We saw it in 2016. We saw it in the 2018 midterm elections, where these obstacles are put in place to try to prevent people from voting who are not going to vote on quote unquote your side. Right. To strengthen our democracy, we've got to make sure that we're doing all we can to make it as easy and as accessible as possible and remove as many of these barriers as possible, whether or not the voters in one location or another are going to be voting for your team or not. So that's an issue that we need to continue to try to address. The issue of election security and the legislation that I've introduced, the Securing America's Elections Act, is critical to be passed before the 2020 elections because it speaks to the biggest vulnerability that we have in our democracy right now, which is a teenager has been proven to hack into our election, a replica of our election system in less than 15 minutes. I think you guys are obviously aware of the DEF CON hacking conference and the report that they put out that said, hey, look, we had, I think she was a 14 or 15-year-old girl from Florida who hacked into a replica of their election system in just a few minutes.
And she doesn't even have the keys to the kingdom, so imagine what the people with the keys to the kingdom can do for those who paid them.
So as we talk about interfering in our elections, what we're really talking about is the ability for rogue actors or bad actors, whether they be individuals or groups or countries, right now today would be able to go in and manipulate the count of votes that we cast, manipulate the outcomes of our elections, which threatens to undermine our democracy itself. If people don't have a basic trust and faith that the votes that we cast, which represent our voices, will be counted accurately, then what do we have? So, solution. My bill does something very simple. It makes it so that every state would use either a paper ballot or a voter-verified paper backup to ensure that no matter the circumstance, if ever the outcome of the election is called into question, there is a paper trail. There is a paper trail.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can be audited to say, yeah, there was manipulation taking place, or there was a hack, or there wasn't, or whatever. Without that paper trail, there is no other way. There's no other way to protect our votes.
Really quick, before I let Paz ask his question, who has co-sponsored this? What progressives, I should ask, have co-sponsored this?
I introduced it in 2017. Actually, I think it was early 2018. I introduced it in 2018. We had a few co-sponsors, but really it did not catch traction, which surprised me because everyone was talking about interference in our elections.
Isn't that crazy?
Right. And here is a bill that you could actually pass that has precedence. Virginia was a state who got that DEF CON report, understood how serious the threat was, and they took immediate action before their 2017 statewide elections to protect their integrity, which they did successfully. Exactly. They did exactly what we were calling for, and they told us in a hearing in Congress that was the first time that they had not had a single complaint questioning the integrity of their election and the votes that were counted. Plus, they had the highest turnout that they've ever had in over 20 years.
That's awesome. Wow.
So for people to say, well, this is too big, it can't, no. Virginia did it in several weeks.
It's not big at all. I mean, it's paper. It's just
Exactly.
paper ballots.
Exactly.
It would be a simple solution.
It is a simple solution and an important one.
Really quick, how do you feel about ranked choice voting?
You know, I'm learning more about it. It's something that a lot of folks are bringing up now more in the town hall meetings that we're having, really raising the concern that we want to make sure that our choices as voters are accurately represented through our voting system, and people concerned that that's not the case now. So I think it's an issue that I think more people need to be educated about in order to really consider it seriously.
Okay.
Is it getting any momentum in Congress right now as you're trying to?
That's what we're working on. You know,
Yeah.
there are some issues that were just raised in Georgia. A lot of issues that are raised in states that don't use paper ballots at all. They don't even have that option for people. So if there's no paper backup, again, the vulnerability has been exposed. We're offering a bipartisan solution that I think could be passed very quickly. So your guys asking the questions and giving me the opportunity to talk about it does a lot to be able to help raise that awareness, so people who are watching can call their member of Congress and say, hey, why aren't you on the bill?
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about something you haven't talked a lot about lately. Assad. Just kidding. I mean, a lot of people talk about this meeting with Assad all the
Costa,
time.
let me just say,
Yes.
I don't know if this camera is on here, but thank you for this Hawaii mug for my tea.
No, listen, you're coming to an Italian grandma's house, and I'm going to make things happen. I had to make sure we had a Hawaiian coffee mug for you to
not
drink your
gone
tea.
unnoticed.
Thank you so much. You're
As
making
you were
me
saying.
blush. We were talking about a subject not talked about often was
Yeah.
Assad, but all kidding aside, a lot of people talk about that meeting, and I hope you continue to meet with our adversaries, continue to talk to them.
Yeah.
I hate the whole notion and the idea that you shouldn't talk to our enemies or adversaries or whatever you want to call them. But
Because the only alternative
yes,
to not having the courage to take those tough meetings is war.
gotcha.
That is the whole point. That's why I met with Assad. That's why I met with Donald Trump to
Yeah.
talk about the issues of what was happening in Syria, the threat of ISIS, and the need to end these wasteful regime change wars. It's why I've advocated then for President Obama and then President Trump to meet with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Unless we have the courage to take those meetings, to have those conversations, literally the only alternative is war.
Gotcha. How is it when you went to Syria, the people itself, though? Because we often see that, Assad is a brutal dictator. He murders his people. But
One second, Johnny. We have people in the super chat saying that we need to turn it down. Turn down the OBS dial, please, because it's coming a little bit high. A little bit more.
Wow.
There we go. Good
Great
stuff.
feedback.
Yeah. That's why I love him.
Perfect. So we see a lot of mainstream media in the States and how they demonize Assad, and they demonize any leader in any country that we want to go to war with, the elites, that is.
That's usually the first step.
Totally, it's the regime change playbook. Yeah. However, when we see a lot of independent media, when I watched a lot of real news, we would see Assad driving around the country in a Honda. A lot of his people are very supportive of him. What did you witness from the people on the ground in Syria? Because we often forget about them. How do they feel?
Yeah, the people who are suffering as a result of what's happening there. I was glad that in the short time that we were there, we had the chance to meet with people from different parts of the country. We met with religious leaders from both Aleppo as well as in Damascus, of all, Christians, Catholics, Muslims, many different religious leaders who were very concerned, saying, if you topple Assad, the ones who will take over are terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and the very first thing that they will do is massacre religious minorities.
This is
in
the people
Syria.
This is the people on the ground.
These are religious leaders. These are
so the religious leaders are saying this, and Assad is supposedly secular.
They were taking a very realist view. Like this is the reality that they're facing. We walked through some of the churches that have been bombed in Aleppo. They knew that they would be the very first targets.
Yeah.
We met with college students walking down the street and through the markets. We happened upon some college students and just started talking with them. We Gosh, I mean, we met with some of the political opposition.
Yeah.
People who are opposed to Assad, people who were some of the leaders of the initial protests that happened in 2011. And from them, they were talking about the kinds of reforms they want to see in their country. The constitutional reforms, freedom of elections, all of these different things that were very important for them.
Yeah.
But they did not support the interference from the United States,
Really?
Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, all of these other countries who were coming in trying to wage this regime change war.
So is civil war a misnomer then?
Well, because they understood and this was a message that we heard throughout with a lot of different people and groups that we heard there, was it is the Syrian people who must determine their own future.
Yeah.
Very proud, strong,
Absolutely.
passionate people who love their country, who love their people. And wherever they fell on, pro-regime, anti-regime, many of the people we talked to, look, they just said, we want peace. We want peace. They said, we love Americans, but we hate your government
Gotcha.
for what you are doing to our country.
There's such an outlier in the world. You know what? I'm so glad that, because I didn't even know. I just learned something new today. I didn't know that the religious leaders were fearful of what would happen if Assad's government. And then the opposition
and
leaders.
It's because it's not an unfounded fear. It's because of what they have already been
history.
seeing.
Yeah, we know
in
Iraq right next door.
now. Exactly.
So true.
Exactly.
So my question to you is, how long have you been speaking and learning Russian? No, in all seriousness.
I'm trying to think. Do I know a single Danka? Does it mean thank you or something like that? I don't know.
Donkey
Isn't that German?
Is that Shrek?
That,
is that from
that
Shrek?
see, look at me.
Yeah, Danke is German.
That's German, right? I'm
We have a
sorry.
bubble
Not a
stuff.
Russian
I'm
bot.
sorry.
No, but seriously. So one of the things that people have loved about you is you're the first presidential candidate or anybody who even has the potential to occupy that office that has been very critical of the corruption within the intelligence community.
Yeah.
Corruption that has led to, especially after this Russiagate situation with, friendships ended, careers disparaged, like relationships have been, and it's one of people are telling me that they were broke up with their significant others over things that, the intelligence community perpetuates, and we know that the history of the intelligence community demonstrates they don't have, they're not really the most credible. So we've been getting a lot of questions about the fact that either you used to belong to Council of Foreign Relations and you might still belong there. I haven't checked, and they want to know, like, is there a reason? Why are you still part of it if you are, and do you plan on trying to sway them, because they've been known to work in conjunction with our intelligence communities that you obviously are so critical of. So if you could give us a
Sure.
little insight into that, that'd be dope.
So the committee that I first joined when I was elected to Congress in 2012, was sworn in early 2013, was the Foreign Affairs Committee. The first year I was there, I was on the Homeland Security Committee, and then moved from there to the Armed Services Committee. And as you know, one of the main reasons that I ran for Congress was to try to influence and impact our foreign policy, to not just tweak around the edges, but to bring about this sea change that we need to see to end these wasteful regime change wars and focus on how we're putting the interests of our country at the forefront of the decisions that we're making. So the Council on Foreign Relations, I'm looking to engage with different people who are working in this area. I was basically what they call a term member for the Council on Foreign Relations, which is for people who are under the age of 40, and it lasts for 5 years.
Oh.
And so they have different things that they that they do to bring people into these conferences, host speakers and things like that. Brought in some speakers to Congress and dealing with North Korea, and through that process heard a very diverse set of views from fellows and different people who are a part of that organization, some of whom share my worldview, many others who do not. So again, I think it's
basically the same situation you're in Congress with right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, yeah, it's
many others not.
It's I think we like we said earlier, we can't be afraid to have these engagements and conversations. Look, my mission is very clear. My position is very, very clear. And it's not something that wavers regardless of who I'm talking to.
That's amazing to hear that you're willing to be in the lion's den and still say, well, I'm going to use my voice to persuade people. And if you don't like it, well, sorry, you got to deal with it anyway. So that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear
if we
that.
only sit in rooms with people who we agree with, then we won't be able to bring about the kind of change that we need to see. There's a lot of folks who don't know a lot of the information that you guys have, who haven't done a lot of that research. And so it's important to be able to expand and to get out in front of people and answer their questions and try to raise that awareness about the truth of what's going on.
Absolutely.
And speaking about, our involvement in our knack for regime change wars and imperialism, Venezuela has been a huge topic right now as far as foreign diplomacy. Do you support Jimmy Carter's assertion that Maduro was legitimately elected? And also, do you feel like our sanctions are mostly to blame for the economic situation that has developed in Venezuela?
I haven't heard Jimmy Carter's statement. There have been a lot of differing views on Maduro's election itself. He's the leader of that country. The United States needs to keep our hands off of what the Venezuelan people are currently going through right now, which is determining what kind of leadership in future that they want for themselves.
Right.
That is ultimately the bottom line. I think there's no question that our sanctions have certainly played a role in exacerbating the humanitarian crisis that exists there and the hardship that the Venezuelan people are dealing with. This is one of the problems with our sanctions regime overall. And I just found this out because I was looking for information about what are the impacts of our sanctions around the world, and who is suffering as a result. Because most often what we're hearing is it's not the intended quote unquote targets, whether it's leaders in the government or whatever. It is the people in these countries who end up really suffering. In a
the super chat right now
way.
is going crazy over your answer, by the way. They've been waiting for somebody else to say that. That's
Here's
in the
the
leadership
thing.
position.
What I found is that there is no report or mechanism in the United States government that assesses the impact of our sanctions. What was the objective? Are they working? What are the perhaps negative unintended consequences? How are they impacting our country, our economy, our interests? So I'm literally working on a bill right now to introduce in Congress that would make this assessment a regular thing, so that we leaders, we the people, can actually look. I think most people don't even know how many sanctions we have around the world. Yeah. And again, who is suffering as a result?
Always the people.
It's a good thing that the Convo Couch did a show on that 2 weeks ago about how sanctions really affect. No, I mean seriously, Maduro trying to get insulin for his people. Yeah. Poor people who need insulin, and yet the United States government has cut off the transactions to the bank, so he can't get the Canadian people, the Canadian banks, the money, the millions of dollars to get that insulin in. So it really affects the poor people. I'm so sorry.
No. Before you do that, I want to let everybody know that you're 15,000 donations away now? Individual
we just crossed
donations?
the 50,000 mark in the individual contributions that we need to get on the DNC debate stage in June. So we are getting closer, but we still need.
So everybody who's watching, you can literally donate $1. Get your family to donate $1. Clearly, you're listening to this. You can clearly see she needs to be on the debate stage like 2 days ago. So, but go ahead, Craig.
Well, you know what?
Ask my last question
you should do your last question, because I'm going to do the 60-second lightning round and get us out of here.
All right, it sounds good.
Why don't you go ahead? Because
journalists, especially as independent journalists, we definitely value objectivity and journalistic integrity and protecting journalists away from tyrannical governments. With that being said, Julian Assange is going through some clearly secret process that even Chelsea Manning has been incarcerated for because she isn't participating. Do you feel as if Julian Assange is not being treated fairly as a journalist? And how would you handle situations like this where we find out our government is, acting illegitimately and illegally and unlawfully in a lot of ways internationally, but instead we're punishing the people who are allowing us to know that we're not keeping our house clean?
Yeah. I actually put out a tweet on this, and I don't know if there's any way to find it and bring it up quickly on screen, but it directly addressed the importance of the freedom of the press, how this is enshrined in our Constitution, and how dangerous it is that this administration is trying to, and very publicly, designate WikiLeaks as a foreign intelligence agency. And therefore opening up to a whole host of other negative actions coming from our government. it is dangerous when we have people in our own government who hear things from independent journalists, for example, or don't like the things that folks are saying, and then can do things like, hey, let's designate them as a foreign intelligence agency just to shut them down. So that's something that we have to we can't be complacent. We can't be complacent about. And again, we've got to call it, because I think a lot of folks in the country probably don't know a lot about what's going on or don't understand what's going on. But we have to call it out for what it is, because this isn't something that just affects one person or one entity. This is something that threatens the very freedoms that this country stands upon.
All right, 60-second lightning round. Go ahead.
You want to do it right now?
Go ahead.
We're going 60 seconds. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
60 seconds. I'm going to give you a couple questions. You give me the answer. Ready?
Okay.
Biggie or Tupac?
Ooh, Tupac.
Favorite romantic comedy?
What's the British one?
Love Actually.
Yeah. Let's go with that. I don't know, man.
A sport or an activity you like to play other than surfing?
Ooh.
Martial arts, volleyball. Yeah.
Okay. 2 songs that you are bumping right now on your playlist.
What am I? Love Wins. Awesome song. I think that's Carrie Underwood.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the one Dad always sings? Times They Are A-Changin'. Old one. Dylan. Good one.
Times They Are A-Changin'. Last
Yes.
question. Be careful about this one because you're going over to see Ron Placone. Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Boy, if you don't stop with the blasphemy, of course.
You have no idea how many people are asking me this question lately. Like at town hall
It's a
meetings
trick
or
question.
shaking hands,
It's not a
they're like,
trick question,
this
it's
is
one
the
answer.
most important
You're
question I
talking
have
a
to
guy named
ask you.
Costa here.
This-
Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
You're hesitating.
Hey, I'm going to say yes.
All right.
I like pineapple on my pizza sometimes.
Absolutely. You
Okay.
got to be
other
decisive with your decisions. You're going to be president, Tulsi, okay? Just say yes and
Hey, I was
tell
just
them mind
watching
business.
this little tension.
Because
My
if I
gosh.
make you a pizza or pasta, there will be no pineapple.
That's fine.
So that's
And-
just
Hey,
As a-
freedom.
and as a good friend who cares about, the taste of things, I will bring you pineapples and put it on there for us.
All is good, man. All
Thank
is
you all.
good.
Thank you all so much
Thank
for
you.
tuning
It's
into this
great
live
to be
stream
here with
segment.
you guys.
Thanks for coming by. We really
Yes,
appreciate
thank you
it.
so much.
for
I appreciate
thank
it.
you
Have
for
me back again.
No, of course,
will. All right.
yeah. Thank you for
Totally.
coming on in this independent media. I know you're going on Jimmy Dore show, so make sure you go check that out after this. I know you're supposed to be going on to a couple of other things, but just coming on and talking to the people, which and answering questions for the people instead of for the the mainstream media and the journalists who are just trying to railroad anybody that doesn't agree with them. The people really love it. The comment section has loved you, and of course we love you here as well. As a progressive, as an independent who's been one my entire life, never been a Democrat, never been a Republican. I really appreciate the nuanced discussion that you bring to the table.
Thank you.
And the discussion I hope to see you have on that debate stage.
Well, let me also just add my words of thanks to you guys for the work that you do, and you work very hard to try to find the truth, to remain objective, and to really help to inform and educate and engage people in these kinds of conversations. This is what we need more of. So appreciate all the work that you're doing.
And we're going to go take selfies with Tulsi. Peace. But hey, people, always remember, more than anything else, find your balance.
There you go.
Peace.